Over the last few years, I've seen some pretty sad spaces in this city, but to be honest with you, I've never been in a place as depressing as this one, right beside the Lansdowne subway station. But all of that is about to change. My name is Carson Arthur, and on this episode of Green Force, we're gonna take this neglected piece of land and transform it into a work of art.
Lansdowne Station is one of the stations that was originally constructed in the 1960s. It's one of thousands of spaces that exist within the city that have been left behind. They're orphaned, and that's why we call them orphan spaces.
I thought it was kind of derelict. I wasn't sure whose responsibility it was.
The demographics are changing, the neighborhood feeling is changing, but it still is a neighborhood that's got some real challenges. We're looking forward to a greening of that space that's aesthetically pleasing that the community can use.
I'm assuming this is the space here?
This is the space indeed.
Yeah, I was kind of afraid you were gonna say that. Yeah. Well, I've seen prettier spaces in the city.
Yeah, it's not one of the most beautiful. Got asphalt, got litter strewn, it's gonna be a challenge.
Those are access doors?
That's right.
For the building, I'm assuming, as well?
That's right. They need access to their property. They have the right-of-way access over this property. It's owned technically by the City of Toronto, but it's been ceded to the individual property owner to maintain.
And what does the community want to see in this space?
There are people living across the street in the apartment buildings, and people coming into the TTC. For the people down the street, they'd like to see a greener, a more inviting piece of property that they could use.
With all the wires and the building here and the fact that we are close to the tunnels, this is going to be a challenge, I promise, but I've got some ideas. Great. We're going to make it work. It's going to be a very interesting project.
We're looking forward to it.
I want you to see the design at this point because this is fairly early on in the concept stage, okay? So this is the actual space that we're going to be working in, okay? The Lansdowne community hasn't really had the best reputation over the last few years, but they're working so hard on trying to change that. So we're helping everybody else really take pride in the space that they live.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, we are going to put in the border here.
It's for the snow clearing and whatnot.
Exactly. Material-wise, you have a few options. We can go with a loose material like a gravel, or we can look at doing an aggregate concrete pour.
I'm kind of leaning towards wanting to have something that's going to stay put and is going to look good 3 years from now.
Okay. You'll notice that there are a lot of rocks to help create elevation changes in the space.
Okay.
But there will be some across the front because I'm trying to create that separation between the private area, which is the garden, and the public, which is the sidewalk.
Now, how are you going to prevent people from getting to the back of this garden?
The plant material itself in this space, for the most part, will be native plant material. Okay. Things like golden elder, which kind of looks like that, which has got lots of great color to it. No care, no maintenance.
Yeah.
And things like this heuchera, which, same thing, very fresh, very green.
And how about the watering?
Once they get established in the space, they really can survive on the rainfall. Okay? But specific to your question of how do we keep people out, I want to incorporate thorny plants.
I can see the thorns right here. They're nice and sharp.
The thorny plants are in strategic spaces.
That you're just not going to want to sit on them.
Exactly.
Got it.
That's
okay.
the key.
What are these two circular things on the plan?
They're not real trees. They're going to be man-made. I'd like to create some really high trellis systems, and I want them to be probably, 9 to 10 to 12 feet tall.
They're not going to have the same root structure, but they're going to have the same effect.
That's kind of the plan.
Great.
On this wall here, I'm going to introduce trees graphically. Okay? I'm going to use it on an outdoor fabric.
Yep.
We're going to mount it on the front face of the wall as a huge mural.
Cool.
So it's going to feel more like an art installation versus a green space. And that's what I want this to look like.
One of the most exciting things about my job for me is when art and landscaping combine to create spaces like this. This is an art installation beside a freeway in the middle of nowhere, but it conveys a very unique perspective on behalf of the artist to all the people passing by. And because they're thinking about it, they become emotionally invested. I want people who see it to wonder what's going on there. And if I've done my job well, then everyone should be amazed.
If you can start going tomorrow, that'd be great.
We can do it.
We had some very unique challenges on this particular site, and he's found some creative ways to get around them and still produce something that I think is going to be fantastic.
Today's rip-out day at Lansdowne subway station, which means we're going to start painting the walls, and once we've got the space clear, we can start removing all the asphalt and that toxic soil underneath. While the crew's hard at work, Sean and I are going to get a chance to go through the design so that he can express any concerns. So this is the design, all right?
Beautiful.
Keep in mind, this is loosely translated. It's just a concept.
Naturally.
These huge circles are not trees. Ordinarily, you define the space as trees.
we're gonna do it with planters.
Okay.
Okay, and I want them to frame this wall because on the wall, as you can see here,
Right.
the 4 panels there,
Okay.
I'm envisioning photography hanging down.
Excellent.
And I'm gonna bring in trees that way.
Nice. Beautiful. What's going in the planters?
I was planning to use wisteria because I want a vine that's gonna be hardy enough to kind of take over that entire space.
Okay. What about something for when the spring is done, like a John Cabot rose?
You know what? I'm willing to try it for sure. Okay. Now this band in front here, the city wants an allowance of 12 inches and they don't want a loose material there.
There's actually a concrete factory just up the street.
All right, well, let's get the neighborhood involved. I like that. I wanted to define the space a little bit with the armor stone.
Fair enough.
I will be choosing native plant material for the entire
Beautiful.
thing, but I want them to be thorny.
Barrier plants.
Barrier plants is exactly the right term. I want to create this visually stunning, but I don't want people in this space.
Sure.
I'm gonna go plant shopping.
Okay.
I leave this space to you guys. Now, even though these little shrubs aren't native, I'm still a huge fan of the Japanese mountain pieris because I've had great success with it in dry situations. I love the color of the new growth. Those are the new leaves, and they're so striking against the older established leaves, which happen to be green. So basically, anywhere you put this shrub, it's going to be a showstopper. Now this is barberry. Basically, barberry is covered in hundreds of little thorns, which is perfect for keeping people out of spaces you don't want them in, which is why I'm using this plant in all the access points. It also has great color. This is absolutely stunning. So not only is it good at deterring people, it's also beautiful to look at. Now, believe it or not, this is a vine. Even though it looks like a tree, this is wisteria. This is the most aggressive vine out there, which is why it's absolutely perfect to fill out my metal planters and make it look like this is in fact a tree. The less care it gets, the more it blooms. So in a spot where it's not gonna get any attention at all, it is gonna do amazingly well. But we can't make it out of this metal, right?
There's nothing more industrial than rebar.
This big wall looks like a good target for graffiti.
The Green Force team is redesigning the outside of one of Toronto's busiest subway stops, Lansdowne Station. We've removed a huge slab of concrete and several loads of contaminated earth and are replacing it with tons of nutrient-rich soil and some awe-inspiring garden architecture. So basically what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to make a trellis system for a vine, but round, as if they were trunks of trees, because I'm gonna plant a vine in them, and then the vine's gonna spill out over the top.
What kind of shape? Like a tapered shape or
Sort of.
some shape to it?
Do you have chalk or something? If this is looking down on top of it, so the top would kind of look like that a little bit, but then I want the channels to kind of go into a centerpiece.
Okay.
Or if you're looking at it flat, it's almost like this sort of shape, because I'm in a spot where I can't put trees, but this sort of fakes it.
Ah, once it grows in, it's going to give you that illusion of a tree.
Yeah.
What size are we talking about here, Carson?
I want these to look fairly big, so I'm thinking probably about 9 feet. And I want these to look fairly industrial. Okay, so I don't want it a finished, painted look. I want it to look fairly rough.
Normally, I'd suggest something in a tube, something in a hollow structural.
Okay.
We're going to have to take some material, and we've got to get this radius.
Okay.
So we got to play with steel. I've got a piece here that we can bend up. So let me tweak this up here on the U-bender. Again, it's just a representation. It might be pretty close.
This is the right shape. This is what I want, the arc out, but we can't make it out of this metal, right?
If it's going to be left to the elements and to rust away, the hollow tube's not going to give you as much longevity.
What about that?
Well, that's rebar. You mentioned industrial. There's nothing more industrial than rebar.
And that's got the look of bark.
Let's bend up some pieces. Let's see if we can establish a two-dimensional profile before you leave, just
Okay.
so that I'm on your page, yeah?
Okay.
Let's try that, Carson.
All right, so this is 2 sides of the planter, kind of like that.
Yeah.
And then we do a lot more around in a circle. I think we've got a tree.
Perfect.
Only 30 more to go. Throughout my career as a landscape designer, I've either worked around existing trees or planted new ones into spaces because I believe so strongly in the benefits that trees have on the environment. But at the Lansdowne subway station, I'm not able to do that because of the proximity to wires and to the tracks below. So I have something else in mind. I'm gonna take a picture of a tree, this one right here, and I'm gonna have it blown up so that it fills that big blank wall. So basically I want to use this picture and I want to blow it up so that we can use it outdoors.
No problem.
Okay.
This is a 15 mil scrum vinyl.
Okay. This is a huge wall and I need to cover a lot of it.
These rolls come on rolls of 42 inch by as long as you want.
Although,
I could do 4 individual panels and actually leave spacing in between them.
Sure.
So 4 panels, 15 feet tall. I think that's gonna work actually.
Great.
I do want to do this in black and white because I think that's going to be a bit more dramatic in the space. How long is it going to take you to finish this?
We'll have it free for the end of the day.
Perfect. You got a deal, sir.
Very good.
I really love Sean's suggestion about including Explorer roses at the bottom of the rebar planter.
What about adding something that would bloom later in the year, like a John Cabot rose?
Now, Explorer roses are travelers, which means they're climbers, which is why it's ideal in this application. The wisteria will grow out over the top and bloom in early spring. The rose is going to grow up from the bottom and bloom in early summer, giving me a whole second season of interest. The only thing I have to decide is what color to choose from. A lot of construction's happening today at Lansdowne subway station. We've got all of the soil already in place, but now we're starting to define the space a little bit better with the big chunks of armor stone. And while all of that is going on, Adam is coming by to inspect our progress. I wanted you to see the space sort of at this point because we're almost halfway.
Well, it's changed a lot since the last time I was here.
Various shades of brown.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a big difference. What are you doing over here with this big pile of rocks? They're a work of art, a piece of sculpture.
Yeah, that wasn't quite the art that I had planned
Okay.
for this space. Actually, you can see here we're starting to put the rocks in patterns, and you can see we're starting to create pockets and elevation changes by using the rocks.
Now, in terms of this area up front here, that looks like there's a lot of dirt missing. What's the idea and the plan here?
Well, we've taken in about 3.5 feet of soil from this space. It was quite contaminated, so we've put in all new topsoil. We've treated it. We're going to be putting mulch on top of that as well, a composted mulch. But in answer to your question, that strip right there is going to be a concrete pour.
Okay. Now, in terms of that big brown wall up here, it looks like a good target for graffiti.
Well, we've got those big white sheets that are going to hang down that
Okay.
will have the images on them. And then the areas that aren't going to be covered, I have got really good shrubs planned for those that have big thorns. We're going to call those barrier plants.
Sounds good to me.
Well, as long as you're happy so far, we're going to keep going. No changes to this point.
Keep going, get it done.
Good. So how bad is this really going to smell? Because I came prepared.
I'm glad you came prepared.
I thought this was coming in 2 parts.
It can.
The Green Force team and I are installing a garden at the entrance of the Lansdowne subway station. We're creating a space that is designed to visually stimulate the passers-by, yet deters people from hanging around. Think of it as an outdoor gallery, and this transformation as a piece of art. So how bad is this really going to smell? Because I came prepared.
I'm glad you came prepared, Carson. But with our new blend of compost tea, we have new food sources. We're away from the fish, and we're on to the soy.
In the past, I've used soil additives that are comprised of recycled fish parts. It's great for the plants, but the honesty is, it stinks.
It's still certified organic food source. It works almost as well, but no smell.
And what does it mean, soil cycling?
Basically, if you look at a forest, we have a forest floor, which is all that decomposed organic matter. In an urban environment, we don't have the leaf dropping and decomposing. And we need to replace that, and that's exactly what our organic tea does.
I thought mulch actually did part of that too.
Mulch does that, but it's only one food source. We also need those more sugar-based food sources like leaves and foliage to help the bacteria grow. So mulch helps, but it's not the full answer.
Then how is this applied? Are we just spraying it on?
Yeah, we're gonna do a lot of spraying, get it nice and soaked in there, and do a little bit of deep root feeding, not too deep, but just make sure those larger shrubs that are headed in there have a nice, healthy soil system to grow into.
Very cool. Well, I can't wait to see it happen. So let's do that.
Let's do it.
Now, I've had the picture of the tree printed on this outdoor vinyl, which has been treated with a UV protectorant, which makes it perfect for all seasons. I've had it done in 4 individual panels, which will be side by side with gaps in between. Now that way, it really gives a lot of drama to the entire garden. Now, once I lay all of these out, I'm gonna put grommets around the outside so that I can mount this directly to the concrete wall. So with all the grommets in place on the panels, I'm just simply attaching it to the wall using ordinary concrete screws and washers. It's a really easy process. And once the other 3 panels are up, Lansdowne subway station is finally gonna get their tree. I thought these were gonna come in halves.
They were.
Okay.
We have all the equipment necessary to be able to cut it in half and weld it back together here on site. But it's my hope that we can find another way.
So what were you thinking?
Well, short of cutting them in half, what if we set the planters in the ground, pre-dig the hole for the plant material and then slide the plant material in up over it and into it.
Look at that. Okay. The trick is going to be getting it up over the top.
All right, well, let's dig a hole.
It works.
Okay, let's do it.
Now that all the plant material has arrived, it's time to put the local community volunteers to work. Basically what you have to do is stick the plant in the ground. We're gonna start small, and we'll work bigger from there. Then I'll get you doing the rest. I'm just kidding. Well, as you can see, Lansdowne subway station is already going through a dramatic change. But now you can start to see some of the design elements I wanted to include here. Now these rocks give me elevation differences in a space that used to be flat. We've also created height with these fantastic rebar planters. And once the wisteria grows up through the top, this is gonna look like a tree. My other tree here happens to be mounted on a wall. Now, these are the photos that I took in the park. It gives this a lot of drama. And as the cedar trees grow up, it will fill in this entire space. Here, I've planned for a lot of perennials and shrubs. They're gonna do well without a lot of care. And the whole project has been set in by those 12 inches Adam asked for. Now there's lots of access for the snowplow and for pedestrians. And as the Green Force team works hard at getting everything in place, we can start bringing in that composted mulch. And I promise, when this project is all done, this space is gonna look amazing.
Hey, Carson. I brought the best for last.
I'm really glad you convinced me to do this because I love the idea that this is going to bloom sort of early summer and the wisteria blooms early spring, so we'll always have something flowering all year long.
Exactly. Beautiful.
One more to go. Let's plant the other one.
Awesome.
Do you remember what this used to look like?
Yeah, big change from an asphalt slab.
I think it's beautiful. It really just adds some color to the neighborhood.
I like to see it when I walk by.
Green Force has taken a neglected piece of property next to the Lansdowne subway station and transformed it into a beautifully designed urban garden. We've removed all of the old earth and concrete and replaced it with tons of hardy plants and shrubs. We've built custom trellises out of rebar and finished it all off with a mural on the wall. We have a few final touches left, then the garden will be ready for Councillor Giambroni and the local subway patrons. Now this is called a yellow ribbon cedar. The new growth on this tree is a bright yellow. I like it because it makes a great contrast compared to the dark green of the older growth. Now I've picked it specifically because I want this space to be bright and beautiful. When it comes to choosing ornamental grasses in spaces like this that are partial shade and sun, there isn't really a long list. Now it's called the Japanese forest grass, and I love the fact that it has a variegated leaf. That way, even when this is dark and shady, this always stands out. This prickly little evergreen here is called holly. Now holly is a unique plant because there are male and female specimens. Holly is chosen for a garden because of those bright red berries on these dark green leaves. But to get those berries, you have to make sure you have 3 or 4 females and at least 1 male. Over time, this vine is going to fill in and make this planter look like a tree. Speaking of which, it's time to show this garden to Councillor Giambroni. Do you remember this space?
I do. It's certainly changed a lot. Big change from an asphalt slab. From the original day, it was you know, the asphalt and where we started out, and now we've got this incredible garden. It's quite a beautiful spot all of a sudden. People have already been remarking on it.
Well, let me point out a few things to you, okay? Now the panels on the wall, those are actually a photo that I took in Hyde Park of a tree by the water. And that's my attempt at introducing trees into this space.
Right.
These rebar planters, very industrial. I felt that was in keeping with the neighborhood. Now in time, those vines, which are wisteria, will grow up and fill out over the top of them. So it'll look like a tree. And then at the bottom, you'll see that there's roses. And the roses will work their way up. So what's gonna happen is it's just gonna come out over the top.
Explode over.
Yeah, so you'll have lots of color multiple times of the year.
They're gonna be amazing columns.
And then you can see that there's a ton of plants in here.
There's chock-a-block of plants.
Yes, well, I want this to be bursting at the seams.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Behind each of the rocks, there's a barberry. They're gonna really detract from people wanting to be there. We made the space very user-friendly as far as an aesthetic, but at the same time, people don't want to go into that area. And that was the main goal of this garden. And then this
This is that setback for the snowplow and for the pedestrian, so hopefully they'll have lots of access to the space.
Yep. What Carson and then the whole, I guess, Green Force team has brought to the project is quite a remarkable product, and I think everyone in the neighborhood will be thrilled. I just think it adds a whole level of pride and really respect for the neighborhood. Well, it's a huge change from when we first came out here. This is fantastic. You've done a really amazing job, Carson.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Happy to be here for you.
I think it's beautiful. It really just adds some color to the neighborhood.
I think it really contributes to people's sense of community. I'm happy with it. I like to see it when I walk by, so.
Shows that someone cares about the neighborhood, and maybe if it's treated nicely, more people will kind of join into that movement and spread the greenness.
If we're truly invested in making our cities into beautiful spaces, we need to start addressing the neglected and abandoned areas. Through the hard work of the Green Force team, we took a place that people used to avoid, and we transformed it into a work of art. And now, instead of just passing by, people actually want to stop and enjoy it. My name is Carson Arthur. Thanks for watching.
It's really, really nice. It shows that people care.
It was very appealing. It did make you feel safe. And the transformation has been amazing. It's green. It's welcoming. It makes the subway nice to come to and nice to travel by.